Remember to engage with this content, share your feedback, and follow for more compelling narratives. The downpour arrived with autumn's final breath, transforming the world into a canvas of muted grays and silvers. Wrapped in my favorite throw, I cradled a steaming mug of lavender tea while watching classic films flicker across the screen in gentle black and white tones. The house embraced its familiar solitude, especially profound during these evenings when my daughter Emma studied at university far from home. Emma had departed for her studies some time ago, yet certain nights like this one amplified the house's emptiness with startling clarity. Wind sang its melancholy song through the rafters while raindrops performed their rhythmic percussion against glass panes, creating my only companions besides the ghostly figures dancing across the television screen. Sleep must have claimed me, momentarily, lulled by nature's symphony and the tea's gentle warmth, because the sound that shattered the tranquility sent my pulse racing like a startled bird. Someone was knocking not timidly, but with purpose and determination upon my front entrance. Who could possibly venture out in such weather, I wondered. The evening had grown late on this weekday, and the tempest raged with unusual ferocity. Social calls had become rare occurrences, particularly during such inhospitable conditions. Perhaps a stranded motorist required assistance? Concern mingled with natural caution as I contemplated the possibilities. Emma wouldn't return for many weeks, and I expected no visitors. Silencing the television amplified the storm's voice, and I listened with heightened attention. Another knock echoed through the hallway, matching the first in its insistence. Clearly, someone needed help. Smoothing my cardigan and drawing a steadying breath, I navigated the shadowy corridor toward the entrance. Through the peephole, rain distorted my view, but a tall silhouette hunched against the elements became visible on my porch. The figure appeared young, male, with hair darkened by the downpour. As he shifted position, recognition dawned slowly. The storm and dim lighting had initially deceived me. Then clarity struck. Daniel, Emma's closest companion. What brought Daniel here tonight? During their secondary school years, these two had been inseparable partners in mischief and dreams. Daniel had become a fixture in our home, emptying our refrigerator, discussing automobiles, and contemplating their futures with endless enthusiasm. He possessed a gentle nature, consistently courteous, perhaps more introspective than Emma, more deliberate in his thoughts. Yet I hadn't encountered him since they departed for separate universities in distant states. Why would he appear at my door during such a tempest? My thoughts raced through alarming scenarios. Was Emma safe? Had misfortune befallen her? Maternal anxiety coiled tightly in my chest as I struggled with the locks, my fingers suddenly unsteady, pulling the heavy door partially open. The wind immediately invaded the hallway, carrying the essence of rain and damp soil. Daniel, my voice trembled slightly as I spoke. Is that truly you? What's happened? Is Emma well? He looked upward, startled, water cascading from his chin. His eyes, typically bright with easy confidence, now appeared shadowed and somehow lost. He was thoroughly soaked, his jacket clinging uncomfortably, and he seemed diminished despite maintaining his full height. Mrs. Patterson, he began, his voice rough and uncertain. Hello. I deeply apologize for this late intrusion, especially during such terrible weather. He gestured vaguely at the raging storm behind him. Is Emma? I started. No, Emma's perfectly fine, he interrupted quickly. As far as I know, I didn't intend to frighten you. Relief flooded through me like a warm tide, though confusion quickly replaced it. Oh, thank heavens, I exhaled deeply. You startled me terribly, appearing like this. Please, come inside. You're absolutely drenched. I opened the door wider, stepping back to welcome him into the hallway's warmth. He hesitated briefly, glancing back into the dark, rain-swept street as if reconsidering his decision, before crossing the threshold. The night's chill accompanied him, dripping onto the welcome mat. Thank you, he murmured, avoiding my gaze momentarily while shuffling his wet sneakers on the mat. I didn't know where else I could turn. That final phrase lingered between us, heavy with unspoken implications. I closed the door, shutting out the storm, the deadbolts click echoing loudly in the sudden stillness. The hallway felt cramped with both of us standing there, and I noticed his slight trembling. Goodness, Daniel, you'll become ill from this. Cold. Let me fetch you a towel. Come into the sitting room by the fireplace. I maintained a light tone while suppressing the questions churning in my mind. Why was he here? Why did he appear so thoroughly undone? He followed silently into the sitting room where he and Emma had spent countless hours together. I retrieved a thick bath towel from the linen cupboard and offered it to him. He accepted gratefully, burying his face in its softness before beginning to dry his hair and face. I turned away discreetly, pretending to tend the fireplace while coaxing the flames higher. The room glowed cozily in the fire's soft light and a single lamp's gentle illumination. Old family photographs adorned the mantelpiece, including several of Emma and Daniel grinning foolishly during their school years. Seeing them now felt strangely poignant. When I turned back, Daniel had removed his wet jacket, draping it carefully over a chair I'd indicated, away from the carpet. He rubbed his arms, still appearing chilled. "May I offer you something warm?" I suggested. "Tea? Hot chocolate? I believe there's instant coffee somewhere." He managed a small smile, the first I'd witnessed since his arrival. It didn't quite illuminate his eyes, but it was progress. "Tea would be wonderful, Mrs. Patterson." "Thank you. Please, call me Linda," I corrected gently as I always had. "You're no longer in school, Daniel, and neither am I, for that matter." He nodded, looking down at his hands. "Linda, right. Sorry." I went into the kitchen, the familiar ritual of preparing tea providing some stability. My mind continued buzzing with concern. He looked troubled, deeply so. This wasn't merely about the rain. Something in his posture, the guarded expression in his eyes, this wasn't the carefree Daniel I remembered. This was a young man bearing a significant burden. I prepared 2 mugs of chamomile tea, adding extra honey to his. When I returned to the sitting room, he stood by the fireplace, staring into the flames, lost in contemplation. The firelight flickered across his features, highlighting the tension in his jaw. He looked older than his actual years in that moment. I handed him the steaming mug, our fingers brushing briefly. His skin felt cold. "Here you are," I said softly. "Be careful, it's quite hot." He wrapped his hands around the mug, letting the warmth penetrate them. "Thanks, Linda." We stood in silence momentarily, with only the crackling fire and the distant drumming of rain, which seemed to be diminishing now. The initial awkwardness was transforming into a different kind of tension, quiet anticipation, a sense that something significant was about to be revealed. I settled back onto the sofa, gesturing for him to take the armchair opposite. He sank into it, the old springs groaning softly under his weight. He took a tentative sip of tea, his gaze still fixed on the fire. I waited, giving him space, letting the silence stretch. I sensed he needed to gather himself, to find words for whatever had brought him to my doorstep on this wild night. There was a story here. I knew one that extended far beyond simply getting caught in the rain. And for some reason, he had chosen to bring that story to me. The silence wasn't uncomfortable exactly. It felt weighted, expectant. Daniel cradled the mug like a lifeline, his knuckles white. He took another sip, then finally lifted his eyes to meet mine. The vulnerability I saw there was startling. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice low. "This is really strange, me just appearing like this. I probably should have called, but..." He trailed off, shrugging helplessly. "It's perfectly fine, Daniel," I reassured him gently. "You're always welcome here. You know that. But I admit I'm somewhat surprised. Is everything all right? You seem upset." He drew a deep breath, releasing it slowly like he was steeling himself. "Yeah, no, not really. Actually, no." He looked away again, focusing on a spot somewhere over my shoulder. "I drove down from university today. Didn't inform anyone I was coming." My concern deepened. He attended college nearly several hours away. Driving that distance unannounced in this weather. Several hours? "Daniel, what happened?" He ran a hand through his still damp hair, leaving streaks where the water hadn't fully dried. "It's complicated. Issues at school, problems at home." He paused, seemed to struggle for the right words. "My parents and I had an argument over the phone about my major again, about what I'm supposed to be doing with my life." The age-old pressure. I remembered Emma experiencing similar anxieties, though perhaps not to this extent. "They want me to continue with pre-law," Daniel continued, his voice tightening. "It's practical. It's secure. It's what my father did. But I despise it, Linda. I absolutely despise it. Every class feels like torture. I'm failing several of them. Haven't told them that yet." He looked down into his mug. I tried explaining that I wanted to switch, maybe to creative writing or even just liberal arts, figure things out. They wouldn't listen. Dad called it a waste of time and money. Mom just cried, asked why I wanted to throw my future away. His shoulders sagged. It became quite heated. I ended up hanging up on them. And then I just got in my car and started driving. And you ended up here? I asked softly, trying to keep the surprise from my voice. Why my house? He didn't live in this town anymore. His parents had relocated across the state several years back. He nodded, looking slightly ashamed. Yeah, I don't know why really. I just drove. Didn't want to go home. Couldn't face them. Couldn't face returning to my dormitory either. I was just driving south, and I guess I ended up on familiar roads. I saw the turnoff for this town and I just turned. I drove past the old school, past the park where we used to spend time. He paused, taking another sip of tea. And then I found myself on your street. I parked down the block for almost an hour. Just sitting there in the rain, looking at your house, trying to figure out what I was doing. He finally looked directly at me, his expression earnest, almost pleading. I remembered how you used to talk to Emma and me. Not like children, you know? You actually listened. You gave advice, but you didn't judge. Remember when Emma was panicking about university applications? You just sat with her, helped her sort through it all. My parents just yelled. A faint memory surfaced. Sitting at the kitchen table with Emma, papers spread everywhere, both of us tired but working through it all. Daniel had been there too, ostensibly doing homework but mostly just being present, absorbing the calm. I hadn't realized it had made such an impression. I just felt like maybe you'd understand. He finished quietly, his gaze dropping back to his hands. I didn't know who else I could talk to who might actually comprehend it. My heart ached for him. He looked so young, so lost, grappling with expectations that felt suffocating. It wasn't just about changing majors. It was about finding his own path, something his parents, in their own way, were making incredibly difficult. Oh, Daniel, I said, my voice full of warmth. Of course I understand. Or at least I can try. Those pressures are immense, especially when you feel like you're disappointing the people you love. I leaned forward slightly. Choosing your own way, especially when it diverges from what's expected, takes incredible courage. It doesn't sound like a waste of time to me. It sounds like you're trying to be true to yourself. His eyes flickered up, meeting mine again. There was a glimmer of something relief, maybe in their depths. You really think so? I do, I affirmed. Your father's path worked for him, but that doesn't automatically make it the right one for you. And hating what you study, that's a clear sign something needs to change. Law is fantastic if it fits, but if it doesn't, I let the sentence hang. He seemed to absorb my words, mulling them over. The tension in his shoulders eased a fraction. They just don't see it, he said, frustration creeping back into his voice. They think I'm being lazy or scared of hard work. It's not that. I'd work hard at something I cared about, but contracts and tort law, it just feels empty, meaningless, like I'm just going through the motions for them. He sighed. And creative writing. Dad laughed when I mentioned it. Said writers starve. There are practical applications for almost any field if you look for them. I countered gently. Editors, journalists, communications specialists, educators. And beyond that, there's value in studying something simply because it feeds your soul, because it makes you feel alive and engaged with the world. That has worth, Daniel, even if it doesn't come with a guaranteed substantial salary straight out of university. He listened intently, nodding slowly. I wish they could hear that, or hear it from you maybe. He gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. Instead, I just yelled back and ran away like a child. You didn't run away, I corrected. You needed space to think, away from the conflict. That's not childish. That's self-preservation. Sometimes you need to step out of the storm to see clearly. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. This disagreement with your parents, it's not just about your major, is it? It sounds like it's touching on something deeper, about being seen and accepted for who you are, not who they want you to be. Daniel looked startled, as if I'd voiced a thought he hadn't quite dared to articulate himself. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, searching for words. The air between us felt charged, not with awkwardness anymore, but with the potential for real understanding. He had come here seeking refuge and, perhaps unknowingly, seeking permission to feel what he was feeling. The rain had softened to a gentle drumming on the roof, a soothing backdrop to the quiet intensity unfolding in my sitting room. The fire cast long, dancing shadows on the walls, creating an intimate cocoon against the dark world outside. He had driven hours, navigated a storm both literal and metaphorical, to sit in this room, sharing a vulnerability he clearly felt unable to express elsewhere. It was unexpected, deeply so, but there was a rightness to it, a strange sense of purpose. In this late night, rain-soaked encounter, Daniel took another slow sip of his tea, seeming to gather his thoughts. The warmth of the mug seemed to be doing its job. The shivering had stopped, and a little color had returned to his face. He still looked weary, burdened, but the frantic edge I'd seen when he first arrived had softened. "You're right," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "It is deeper than just the classes. It feels like if I don't do this, the law thing, then I'm letting them down completely. Like their approval hinges on me following the specific plan they laid out." He leaned his head back against the armchair, staring up at the ceiling. "It's been like this for a while, really. School, choosing which universities to apply to. Emma was lucky. Your husband," he hesitated, glancing at the photo on the mantelpiece where my late husband Robert stood beaming beside a teenage Emma. "He was always so supportive of whatever Emma wanted to do, wasn't he? And you too?" I nodded, a familiar ache mixing with warmth at the mention of Robert. "We tried," I said softly. "We always believed that Emma needed to find her own passion. Pushing her into something wouldn't have made her happy. And ultimately, isn't that what parents want for their children? To be happy? Fulfilled?" "That's what I thought," Daniel said, his gaze drifting back to the fire. "But my parents, I think they equate happiness with financial security above all else. They struggled when they were younger. Dad always tells me those stories. He sees law as this guaranteed safe harbor, and anything else feels like setting sail in a leaky boat. Their fear comes from a place of love, Daniel," I suggested gently. "Even if it feels like pressure or disapproval right now, they want to protect you from the struggles they faced. The problem is, their idea of protection might be suffocating your spirit." He turned his head, looking at me with an intensity that surprised me. "That's exactly how it feels. Suffocating. Like, I can't breathe. And I feel so guilty for feeling that way because they've given me so much, paid for university. You can be grateful for what they've given you and still disagree with their vision for your future," I assured him. "Those feelings aren't mutually exclusive. It's okay to want something different for yourself. Your life is yours to live, Daniel. Not theirs, not mine, not even Emma's. Yours." I decided to share something personal, feeling it might help bridge the gap, show him he wasn't alone in facing expectations. "You know," I began, swirling the tea in my own mug, "before I met Robert, before I even thought about settling down or having Emma, I wanted to be a photographer. I spent a year after school working odd jobs, saving every penny for a good camera and darkroom supplies." I smiled faintly at the memory. My parents were less than thrilled. They pictured me becoming a teacher or maybe a nurse, something stable, practical. Photography seemed like a pipe dream to them, irresponsible. Daniel listened, his attention fully captured. "What happened?" he asked. "Well, I didn't become a world-famous photographer," I chuckled softly. "Life took different turns. I met Robert. We fell in love. We decided to start a family. Priorities shifted." But I leaned forward slightly, meeting his gaze. "I never regretted that time exploring something I was passionate about. It taught me things about myself, about seeing the world differently. And I kept it up as a hobby for years. It enriched my life, even if it wasn't my career." I paused, letting the story sink in. "Maybe your path won't be a straight line, Daniel. Maybe you'll explore creative writing. Maybe it will lead somewhere unexpected. Maybe it will just be something that enriches your understanding of the world while you figure out the next step. The point is, it's your exploration to undertake. Denying yourself that exploration because you're afraid of disappointing someone else? That's a heavy price to pay." He was quiet for a long moment, absorbing my words. The only sound was the soft crackle of the fire. Then he let out a long breath, a sigh that seemed to release some of the tension coiled inside him. "Thank you, Linda," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Really, thank you. Hearing that, it helps more than you know." He looked down at his hands again, then back at me, a newfound resolve firming his jaw. "I know I need to talk to them again, properly, not yelling over the phone, but really talk. Try to make them understand." "That sounds like a good plan," I agreed. "Maybe write down your thoughts first. Sometimes getting it clear in your own head makes it easier to explain calmly." "Yeah, maybe," he conceded. "I still don't know exactly what I want to do instead of law. but I know I can't continue like this. It's making me miserable. Knowing what you don't want is often the first step to figuring out what you do want, I offered. Give yourself permission to not have all the answers right now. A comfortable silence settled between us again, but this time it felt different, easier. The charged emotion had dissipated, replaced by a quiet sense of connection, of mutual understanding. He had come here burdened and uncertain, seeking something he couldn't quite name, and had found not answers perhaps, but validation, permission to trust his own feelings. It felt strangely intimate, sharing this moment of vulnerability with my daughter's friend, a young man on the cusp of adulthood wrestling with timeless questions. It reminded me of conversations with Emma, yet it was distinct. This was Daniel's struggle, his journey, and I felt a quiet sense of honor that he had trusted me enough to share it. The rain outside had stopped completely now. The only sound was the gentle hiss and pop of the embers in the fireplace. The storm had passed, both outside and, it seemed, within the young man sitting across from me. He looked exhausted but peaceful. The lost look in his eyes had been replaced by a weary thoughtfulness. He finished his tea, placing the empty mug carefully on the coaster on the side table. Daniel stretched, a long, audible sigh escaping him as he did. "Wow," he said, rubbing his eyes. "I feel lighter. It's like I've been carrying this enormous weight around for months, pretending it wasn't there." He looked at me, a genuine, warm smile finally reaching his eyes. "I can't thank you enough, Linda, for letting me barge in, for the tea, for listening, for not thinking I'm crazy or ungrateful." "You're neither crazy nor ungrateful, Daniel," I replied sincerely. "You're just figuring things out. Everyone goes through it, one way or another. We all have expectations placed upon us, and we all have to learn how to navigate them while staying true to ourselves. It's part of growing up, and honestly, it never entirely stops." I smiled back at him. "I'm glad you felt you could come here, really." He stood up, stretching again. "I should probably head out. Let you get back to your evening. I've taken up enough of your time." He glanced towards the hallway where his damp jacket still hung. "Are you sure you should be driving again tonight?" I asked, concerned. "You've driven a long way, you're tired, and you've been through an emotional ordeal. The roads might still be slick." He considered this for a moment. "Yeah, you're probably right," he admitted. "I wasn't really thinking straight when I drove down here. I guess I could find a cheap motel nearby." "Don't be silly," I said immediately, standing up too. "Emma's room is just sitting there empty. The bed's made up. You can stay here tonight, get a proper night's sleep, have some breakfast in the morning, and figure out your next move with a clear head." He looked surprised, then hesitant. "Oh no, Linda, I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition at all." I cut him off gently but firmly. "Honestly, Daniel, it would probably make me feel better knowing you're safe here instead of driving exhausted or staying in some random motel." Considerate, looking out for Emma's friend. I saw the internal debate on his face, but exhaustion and the logic of my offer seemed to win out. "Okay," he conceded, relief washing over his features. "Okay, thank you. That's incredibly kind. It's settled then," I said, feeling a sense of closure to the immediate crisis. "Let me grab you some fresh towels. The bathroom is just down the hall. You remember where everything is." As I went to the linen closet again, I felt a quiet satisfaction. This unexpected visit, born of distress, had transformed into something else entirely, a moment of connection, of offering sanctuary, not just physically from the storm, but emotionally too. It felt good to be needed, to offer comfort, especially with Emma so far away. It filled a little bit of the quiet emptiness I often felt in the house. When I came back, Daniel was looking at the photos on the mantelpiece again, a soft expression on his face as he gazed at a picture of him and Emma, arms slung around each other's shoulders, grinning after winning some school competition. "Simpler times, huh?" he murmured, almost to himself. "In some ways," I agreed, handing him the towels. "But every stage has its own challenges and its own rewards. You'll navigate this one too." He turned from the photos, meeting my eyes. "Thanks to you, I feel a little more like I can." He took the towels. "Well, I guess I'll head up then." "Seriously, Linda, thank you for everything. Get some rest, Daniel," I said warmly. "We can talk more in the morning if you like. Or not, no pressure." He nodded, gave me one last grateful smile, and headed up the familiar staircase towards Emma's old room. I listened to his footsteps receding, the soft click as he closed the bedroom door. The house settled back into quietness, but it felt different now, less empty, less hollow. I went around the sitting room, tidying up the mugs, plumping the cushions. I turned off the television, which had long since faded to a blank screen. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, casting a warm, soft light. I stood there for a few moments, looking into the dying flames, reflecting on the past couple of hours. A young man I hadn't seen in years, my daughter's friend, had shown up on my doorstep, lost and seeking refuge. He hadn't come seeking romance or anything inappropriate, despite what a sensational headline might imply. He'd come seeking understanding, connection, a safe harbor in his personal storm. And I'd been able to provide that. It was a simple thing. Perhaps listening, offering tea, sharing a bit of my own experience, offering a bed for the night. But it felt significant. It was a reminder that connections exist in unexpected places, that kindness matters, that listening without judgment can be a powerful gift. It also brought my own life into focus. My quiet evenings, my routines, the space left by Emma's absence and Robert's passing. Offering comfort to Daniel had, in a way, comforted me too. It showed me I still had something to offer, a role to play beyond just Emma's mother. It was a moment of personal discovery, born from an unexpected knock on the door on a rainy night. As I finally headed upstairs myself, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt earlier. The storm outside was over, and a different kind of storm, the one Daniel carried, had begun to calm. And in the quiet aftermath, there was a sense of hope and growth for both of us.